We all live our life in promises as it relates to work and business. Every time we're doing something, we're actually fulfilling a promise to ourselves, a promise to someone else. And being aware of this and managing it well will massively improve the way you enjoy work and interact with the work that you're doing. If you're new here, my name is Matthew, and my goal is to spark you to think differently so you can create new possibilities for yourself in your life. Most people think about the work that they do as a series of tasks. I'm doing this thing, and then I'm going to do this thing, and then I'm going to do this thing, and that will achieve a project or whatever it is. And that is certainly true, but there's a deeper level to it. And the deeper level is that there are always promises that are underlying all the actions that we take. And a promise does a few different things than just tasks. What a promise does is it closes down certain possibilities for the future and opens up other possibilities. And that's why being able to manage promises well has a big impact on our level of enjoyment and our effectiveness in the work that we do. The first thing you need to really get a handle on in order to manage promises well is criteria of satisfaction. So anytime that you're doing a action, you want to be present to what is the promise that I've made here? And what are the criteria of satisfaction that need to be met in order for this promise to be accepted and agreed on by the person that it's made for? So if this is a customer, there is some, even if it's implicit, criteria of satisfaction. What is it that they are measuring your promise against? How are you going to know that you're actually doing the things that are going to satisfy your customer? A lot of these are often implied. So if, for example, I say, can you get me a coffee? If you're a good friend of mine, you might have a whole set of context of what are my standards around coffee. I want this cup of coffee, I want it at this temperature, whatever it happens to be. Be able to negotiate what the standards are and be really clear on what it is that you need to do in order for the other person to be satisfied are super important. So the next thing you need to be able to manage with a promise is the time frame. So a promise is, I'm going to do X by time Y. The time Y is the next piece. And obviously you're going to commit to doing it by a particular time frame. And often these are implied. For example, if I say, can you get me a coffee? I'm implying that I would like it in the next 10, 15 minutes or so, as opposed to in 5 days' time or in 10 days' time. Being clear around the time commitment is critical. And one of the things that is most important here is that often if you make a commitment and you realize suddenly, oh, I'm not going to be able to fulfill on that or by that time frame, it's being willing and open to quickly and confidently speaking up to renegotiate your promises, to say, look, this isn't going to happen, but what I can do is this, or renegotiating the time. So we've talked about setting standards of satisfaction, talked about time commitments and renegotiating promises. And the last piece is, how do you actually complete a promise? Well, a promise needs to be completed by basically two actions. The person doing the work declares that it's done, and then the person who it's been done for, the customer, says, I'm happy, I'm satisfied with the work that's done, and it's basically like complete after that conversation has happened. And what happens a lot in business is that someone will say, I'm done, but they never check to see whether the person who they're doing it for is happy with the output and they're actually happy with the outcome of the promise. And if you don't check in and close the loop, there's a good chance that you'll end up with people who are not happy with the output, but aren't given the space or the opportunity to say anything about it. This happened to me recently. We ordered a bunch of notebooks. They sent them to us, and all the different staples were in different places all throughout the notebooks, and we weren't satisfied customers and they didn't check in with us. So there was no closing the loop. And so it ends up with this. Now we've got like basically a situation we have to deal with. If they didn't renegotiate that promise earlier, or if they checked in, we could have resolved it in a much more straightforward way than we end up having to because of the lack of communication. So be clear on the criteria of satisfaction, be clear on the time frame, be willing to renegotiate the promises, and make sure you close the loop to ensure that everyone is on the same page about the promise being complete. Those are the key elements of managing promises. If you'd like to hear more from me, I write a weekly email newsletter that I publish on a Sunday, and this week it's about leadership and in the context of promises and commitments. And until next time, the journey continues.